Our next speaker, for those of you that were here during Dr. Lieberman's talk, specifically for the Q&A, you got to hear a little bit from our next speaker, Brian Burkhart. And yeah, you're going to need energy for this one. So I want to introduce Brian, and to introduce him, it's a tall order. And so I'm going to do my best here. So I'm going to start with just a few of his many accolades, as I did for Shasta. He is also an author. He's the author of the book Stand for Something: The Power of Building a Brand That People Authentically Love. He has been a member of the Northwestern University faculty for 6+ years. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Square Planet, and he has worked with and continues to work with just amazing brands like Amazon and AWS and Google and Transamerica and Citibank and Margaritaville and United Airlines and Jim Beam, which I don't know, maybe he has a supply of in his home and chooses to do shots before he gets on stage. I have no idea. What I will say, though, in addition to all of those accolades, is I met Brian probably about 5-6 years ago, super randomly, a story for another time. And to sort of kind of leap off of some of Shasta's content, Brian and I immediately connected. And I'm going to use Shasta's model because we both, at least in my opinion, maybe I shouldn't speak for him, but I believe I can, experienced very positive emotions right out of the gate. We have managed to maintain a consistency in our connections, and without requiring license from one another, we're able to be vulnerable and continue to lean into vulnerability. And it's just one of those individuals that, you know, you meet in life and you feel like they've kind of been waiting for you the whole time to be along the journey for you. And Brian has been that for me. I'm very, very fortunate. The other thing about Brian is Brian has this, and I hope I'm not stealing any of his thunder, but he has this t-shirt. And on the t-shirt is a really, really simple message. And it says, "I'm not for everyone." And well, sorry, Brian, but that's really true. I've been with Brian in places where, and I'm going to use an example and a metaphor from my life. Brian is like cilantro. You either love it or it tastes like soap and you want it nowhere near any of your food. I happen to be the taste like soap cilantro person. I don't know if I have any of my fellow cilantro taste like soap people in the audience. I think it's a gene deficiency or defectiveness, but cilantro is not for me. However, Brian Burkhart is for me. And so maybe not the best analogy, but I am just over the moon excited to bring Brian Burkhart on the stage to talk about connecting and creating relationships with clients. And I have a feeling this is going to be great. Brian, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Connectapalooza.
I am so excited to be here, and I swear to you, this was not planned. Yep, there it is right there. I do have this with me. I spend way too much time on virtual calls like this. And so, yeah, I am not for everyone. And I'm really okay with that. I'm not so okay with the notion of cilantro tasting like soap. And Shasta, I love you, but I must tell you that table 3 is not for me. The incredible few are at table 2. And so right away, I just got to get my peeps out there. The truth of the matter is I am more excited about this day from Dr. Lieberman this morning through already what we've heard, and obviously well into the latter part of the day. This has been awesome content, and it feels really, really comfortable to me on so many levels. What I'm finding as much as anything is that there's actual science to the nonsense that I have been purporting for years. And so to the much smarter people, thank you for validating things that I had a hunch around. I want to make sure that I do a good job of being a good steward of the time. And so I'm going to rock into this. Gang, if you disagree, if you agree, if you have questions, awesome. We can certainly do that at the table afterwards. I look forward to hearing from everyone. Dialogue is great. Monologues, not so much. So please, by all means, be a part of the fun. Okay. My job is to talk about connecting with your customers. And this is something that I've been a big advocate for and employed to do in all kinds of unique ways for a long time. Let me start by telling you about this guy. This is Jason Lemkin. He's a SaaS dude up in the Bay Area. One of those like uber rich, founded a bunch of companies, Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley kind of guy, has a law degree and an MBA, all those kind of things. And I'm with Jason. Jason says that customer success is where 90% of the revenue is. That's a lot of revenue. And it makes sense, right? We can do a lot of things on our businesses to be efficient. But if your customer success rate is super high, if you've got people that never leave, you're going to kill it. And that actually brings me to my very first point. And some of this is just basic stuff, right? Like we know these things. And it's the idea that business really only grows in three distinct ways. You can certainly just do more work with your current client base. And when I say more, I'm not necessarily defining that one way. You can raise your rates and you're suddenly doing more with your client base, or you can do more novel work with those same clients. That absolutely would grow your business. You could do more work with brand new clients. This is one of the hardest things to do, of course, and maybe the most inappropriate for the majority of people. You can simply buy some. You acquire new business. If you're an independent sales rep, you're not going to go out necessarily and buy a whole book, but you could. It's just not always the easiest thing. Three ways to grow your business. And so for me, when I look at this, I'm going to focus on that top one more than anything. That's the easy path to success, right? Is you're going to already be connected with people that know, like, and trust you. So do more with them. And simply raising your rates doesn't always work. So what can you do to grow that connectedness? Well, let me start with a couple of little stories, some anecdotes to get us going here. If you had to guess, I have a hunch you would underestimate the number of people that American Airlines, just American Airlines, flew around the world last year. Now, still impacted certainly by COVID. The numbers were definitely up a little bit, but American flew around 200 million people in 1 year. A lot of bodies. I am San Diego based now. I used to be in Phoenix with Be More. Before that, Chicago. I've been on my fair share of planes. But when I was a Chicago guy, I was a United guy. When I moved to Phoenix about 7, 8 years ago, United didn't work so well. They only had a couple of flights a day, but American was a hub in Phoenix. And so I made a shift. And in under a decade, I have accumulated 1.46 million miles. That's a lot of miles. Yeah, there's some credit card stuff in there too. And if you look real closely, you can see a screen cap from my actual American app. Gang, I have had my button seat way too many times, and it has earned me the executive platinum status. Now, there are certainly more people for sure they'll do that in a year, right? But very, very frequently, I'll get the nice bonus of going to the gate and I'll hear my name, which is never a good thing, by the way, when you're at an airport. It's kind of an arresting thing until you recognize that what's going on is it's American in this case saying, Mr. Brian, we're so excited you're with us today. You get bumped up to first class. That is such a nice bonus, right? And I love the fact that they do that. I'm clearly an existing customer. I've spent plenty of time, money, and effort to be on American when I obviously have choice in the marketplace, but I consistently go there. Much like Shasta talked about, I'm consistently choosing American. And the upside is I get things like that bonus that kick up to first class. Now, American has lots of things that they can do for me and all of us, really. They send me emails. They have a little magazine that I get sent to my home. I get text messages. And if you look real close on that app, you can see there's a little envelope with a little dot by it. I even get in-app messages that I, of course, completely ignore. Of all the things that they do to keep in contact with me, to consistently say, Brian, choose American, those all kind of fall on deaf ears to me. It's white noise in some regard. But I want to tell you a story about this, a little note of thanks. On one of those flights, I honestly don't remember where I was going. I was flying somewhere and I'm in that first class upgrade, which I didn't pay for, but somehow got because of miles and status. I'm sitting there and the flight attendant came over and she handed a little envelope to me. It had my name on the front, said Mr. Brian Burkhart. And I open it up and it was handwritten and it simply said something along the lines of, we're so happy you chose to be on American. Thank you for being a valued customer. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't know her name. I have no clue where I was going. And I can tell you that of all the things that have happened on American, this is the one that I talk about the most. She did such an incredible job of making me feel like I actually mattered, like I was truly special, like I was a customer that they valued. And so the good news is for American, there's only three ways that they can grow their business. They can go buy another airline. That's a gazillion dollars. They can try to convince you who may not fly American to jump on their airline. That's not easy. Or they can do more with people like me who are already believers. And because of that little note, not only am I telling you about it, but you can see again on my app if you took a look at it. I got a flight next week to Austin, Texas. Guess who I'm flying? American Airlines. I am doing more with the same company. It's the best way to do work. Their purpose, their words, not mine. At American, our purpose is to care for people on life's journey. To care for people on life's journey. Now, my company, Square Planet's been around for a couple of decades. I've been at this a long time. And what I've recognized is that the purpose of my firm, why we exist, what we're all about, is actually quite similar. This is Americans, right? Why they exist is to care for people. How they do it is they fly us from A to Z. And what it is an international airline. Well, my little shop, why we exist, it's to elevate people. And I take that profoundly seriously. The notion of putting people in a better place, of coaching and consulting them to make best lives humanly possible in all kinds of fun ways. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And it has nothing to do with the money. I mean, yes, I'm going to deposit the checks, but it's not why I do the work. And how do I do that? Well, I cause a little trouble. I'm here in San Diego. We're making some waves out here. And yes, the stereotypes are true. I will absolutely have a fish taco before the day is out. No doubt about it. And what do I actually do? What's my job? Well, I consult and I create and I present. All of those things truly come together with clients that see the world the same way. I've been working with salespeople and sales teams and lots of executives, like Brian mentioned, from big, huge brands that we all know. I've been on staff at one of the finest universities in the land. I've worked with 20 plus TED speakers. I've done all kinds of stuff. And not every one of those customers is still a customer. And yet there are some that have been seemingly with me from the very beginning. There are some that I have deep, fulfilling relationships with. There are some that I did things like spent this past New Year's Eve with. There are some who I spoke with not too long ago to celebrate her 60th birthday on the phone, reminding of the time that we spent her 50th birthday together in Sonoma drinking wine with my wife and her husband. There are some customers that transcend the typical vendor partner client relationship. How's that happen? That's what today is all about. It's about building your business by keeping those customers, by really truly understanding what it takes to connect in a meaningful, deep, human way. And Dr. Lieberman and Brian and Shasta, and I'm sure the table discussions have already started to really get into some of the baseline, the science. I'm going to get tactical. And I'm going to have you remember my t-shirt. I'm going to say some things that you may not agree with. I'm going to come up with some ideas and strategies that you can fully deny. I would actually ask you to adopt and adapt. That's up to you at table and individual level to do. It's actually fairly easy in my little circumstance to see and understand this model because Square Planet, my company, it's mine. It's my baby, right? It is born of me. And so, what I believe in, the things that I stand for as a human being, are essentially the identical ones that my firm is all about. If you work for a company, that's not necessarily the case. If you're a founder, well, then sure, you can see how that works. And my client base, what they stand for, what they believe in, what their ethos are, that's totally disconnected from me. I have no input or say into that. But what I'm really looking for is the triangulation of those things. The things that I stand for as a human being, the things that my company stands for, and what my clients all believe in. When things are perfect, when it's a warm knife through cold butter, when it just feels like a big warm hug, like an awesome pair of broken in jeans, is when that triangulation occurs. When your clients and you see the world the same way. Let me explain this. What I'm looking for is overlap. Overlap. I'm going to say this word. You're going to see this background image repeatedly today. The notion of really, truly, deeply connecting with your clients is about overlap. And when I talk about overlap, I'm talking about words and ideas. I mean, things that really make you go, boy, they are speaking to me. Behaviors and beliefs, the things they actually do, the way they think through the world. And in many cases, even the products and programs that they put out into the marketplace. And for sure, because companies are just really people, it's the people and the places. There has to be some overlap, some like mindedness, some congruence for it to all truly, deeply work. My company, why we exist, what we're all about is to elevate people. I often help people stand on a stage. They are physically elevated, but I give them the tools, the resources, the confidence, the ideas, the skill set to be better than they've ever been before. That stuff matters to me. If it doesn't matter to you, well, we're not going to have so much overlap. Decent chance that we won't work together. I want you to think about some other brands. This is one of my absolute favorites. Patagonia, the founder, he's an incredible guy. You should read his book about letting his people surf. He just gave his company away, billions of dollars. And he is very, very clear about not being shy around the notion of telling the world the ethos of Patagonia. On the label on some of their clothes for a while, they wrote this very beautiful phrase. I love this, of course. And we know who he's talking about without it really being obvious. This is about the people that want to save the world versus those that don't, and I mean at a physical level. We know totally what Patagonia stands for. How about Chanel? I argue that I could take a $1.99 Tyvek bag from Trader Joe's and it'll serve the exact same function, holding stuff the way this $12,000 Chanel bag will. What Chanel believes in, what they're all about, is status and luxury. It's not wrong. There's nothing wrong inherently with a $12,000 bag. It's different than some people who want to use that Tyvek Trader Joe's bag. This is really all about finding people that understand and believe the same things. This is the behavior. That's overlap. If you've got a Chanel bag, you're not bad. You just believe a certain thing. Jimmy John's. These are not the world's greatest sandwiches. They're also not terrible. They're fine. But what they are is fast. I mean, they're freaky fast, gang. My office used to be in downtown Chicago in an area called River North. It's kind of a cool, creative area, lots of buildings and stuff, and people. It's fun. And we would very frequently, in a time crunch, when we needed to get some food, hop online, order some Jimmy John's, and it was freaky fast. It was like by the time you hit send on your keyboard, the food was there. I don't remember what a single bite tasted like. It was never good nor bad, but it was fast. That's what they're all about. One of my clients, as Brian mentioned, is Margaritaville. What you're looking at is the absolute embodiment of escapism. That's what Margaritaville sells, escapism. This is Oklahoma City, but with the few strums of a guitar, the smell of coconut and maybe some rum, you can escape suddenly to the islands. Escapism. We know what Margarita believed in. Again, I want you to consider the notion of words, ideas, behaviors and beliefs, products and programs, people and places, because friends, it's going to be your turn. I want you to go take 8 minutes, 8 minutes to go to your tables, and I want you to deeply discuss what your best clients have in common with you, the things that really truly feel congruent to you. And best can mean any number of things. It could be simply the clients you like the most. It could be the ones that create the most revenue for you. And don't for a second think that you don't have clients, even if you work in an internal type of job, and don't think you have some sort of outside connection. You do. Even internally, you have people that you're trying to influence and that matter to your world. Those are your clients. There are things where there will be tons of congruence. Talk about it. And each table needs a leader. How we're going to do that is by birthday. Today is February 9th. We're only going forward. I want you to first and foremost find out whose birthday going forward is closest to February 9th. If your birthday is February 8th, you win because you don't have to be team leader. But if your birthday is February 10th, you're screwed in the best possible way. So I want you to take 8 minutes to talk about words and ideas, behaviors and beliefs, products and programs, people and places that are congruent in your world, the things that really, really strike you. Elise is going to send you to your tables. I'll see you in 8 minutes. Go get them, gang. Behind the scenes, gang, is this incredible team of people at Lexico, including my new pal Elise, who's taking good care of us. And so, just in your own little brain, give a shout out of gratitude to those working so hard behind the scenes. And as we go into this, I hope you found a bunch of overlapping things. And I'll tell you, it's not always what you think. For example, it's conceivable that you discussed things like smelly teenagers. Yes, they do stink. I don't even have any of them. You may have talked about the Green Bay Packers, one of my most favorite pieces of things to discuss. I'll get to that in a second. Maybe it's about the latest and greatest in technology, things like the rise of Chat GTP. It could be about how you spend your own personal time, things like yoga or any type of athletic endeavor. It could be as benign as things like the 401k plan, again, internal. If you've got those commonalities, those overlap things, you find that it's easy to have conversation. It's easy to bond. And we've seen the science, those neural synchrony moments with Dr. Lieberman, and certainly as Shasta made very, very clear, this is how friendship really finds a strong footing. I'm going to move on now, but I want you to keep very much in mind those notions of the overlaps that you all just discussed at your tables. Keep this at the forefront because you're going to see how we take those experiences, those beliefs, those programs, those ideas, all those moments of overlap, and we then use them to really further the connection with your client base. Now, we've already once heard a Dr. Maya Angelou quote. I'm going to, of course, do it one more time. It's a different one, but she very famously said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never, ever, ever, ever forget how you made them feel. How you feel. So much of creating amazing connections with your clients and, of course, with people in general is about how you made them feel. And it's one of those things, friends, that I want you to understand that humans are kind of lousy at some of this stuff. We have attention spans that are just brutally bad. A common goldfish, this is proven science, has a greater attention span than the human being. Roughly around 8 seconds for a goldfish, less than 7 for us. We are terrible. We are the kings and queens of shiny object. And so understand that as you're trying to connect with your customers, as you're trying to make them feel something, they don't really want to listen to you. They've got other things going on. And some of you are probably familiar with this book. It's one of my all-time favorites, The Brothers Cheap and Dan Heath. It's a little old, but the material still works. They will tell you that 5% of your clients, your audience, will remember statistics, but 63% will remember stories. Stories fire our brain in a whole different sort of way. They actually stick like the duct tape that really isn't on the cover of this book, only looks like it. And I lean very deeply into the work of the ancient Greeks. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, these are the fathers of modern rhetoric. It's the stuff that I teach my clients, it's the work that I do. And Plato was the one who said, those who tell the best stories rule society. I added the word best. What Plato really means is things like in your family, the dynamic within your family. Think about those who tell the stories. Think about government and very much certainly at work. Those who tell stories rule. American has tried to tell all kinds of stories to me. They've done a variety of things to get my attention. Yet the one that made me feel the most was a handwritten note by a flight attendant. That was the best story. That was the one that I talk about that makes me keep coming back for more. Maybe, just maybe, when it comes to connecting with our clients, the notion of telling the best story is where our brains should be going. It's where our time, energy, activities, and focus should be. Tell a better story, and you'll have a better likelihood of success. Ironically, Bill Gates believes the same thing I do. Bill Gates said, success depends on knowing what works and bringing resources to the problem. Success depends on knowing what works. If we know that great stories matter and we know that making people feel matters, why don't we do that more regularly? If we're trying to grow our business, if we want to do more work with our existing client base, why wouldn't we put a better effort towards the story that we tell? Where do we find the roots of the story? Right here. in the words and ideas, behaviors and beliefs, products and programs, people and places that you have already found overlap. This is your stuff. This is the muse. This is where the material comes from. And unfortunately, for so many people, we never take time to codify it. We don't think about it. We don't do anything with it. And it just sort of languishes. And so do those relationships. What I'm asking you to do today is very simple. It's really stop and think about the relationships that matter most, certainly in this case, customers. Think about those overlap moments and then simply turn the dial up on the volume, amplify the story. You don't have to create fiction, you have it already there. That overlap is the story. What I want you to do is just make it bigger and brighter and louder and more obvious in a way that you've never done before. And I'm going to give you some examples of how to do that. I'm not going to make you just go out into the deepest water on your own. I'm going to bring you there in a way that hopefully makes some sense. What this really is Velcro. Think about Velcro, two very distinct sides, but when they come together, man, it is tight. And I want you to really put this visual in your brain that on one side of that Velcro tab is you. You can be the sticky or the soft side. It's up to you. Doesn't matter. On the other side of the Velcro is your client, right? And what we're trying to do is put those two together in a really harmonious, magical way that is a truly strong bond. It's got some resistance if you try to break it apart. We want to make sure that that relationship continues over the long haul. And how you do that is truly by creating that great story. My table earlier, books came up, and ironically, we talked about something that was really near and dear to my heart. This was just by pure serendipity. And this is another screen capture from my phone from one of my clients, a guy named Walker, who's in Columbia, South Carolina. It was literally this week. He was sitting on a plane, and you can read it. What's a book I can download for my flight to Houston? Now, I didn't care where he was going, but whatever. He knew that I'm a book guy. And it's one of those kind of things that we've talked about before. I've sent him books. He sent me books. It's a thing for us. He's sitting on the plane. He needs something to read. He shoots me a text. I immediately say, Shoe Dog, Phil Knight, founder of Nike, Reboot, Jerry Colonna, amazing books. He had read those books already. And as the chain went down, we landed on a book called The Overstory, which is a Pulitzer Prize winner, unbelievable book. He downloaded it, and I already heard back from him this week. He's saying it's a bit beefy, and I keep telling him, hang on, it gets better. But that's an overlap, something as simple as books. Imagine that Velcro, if you will. Here's my client on a plane getting ready to go somewhere. And when it's time for him to think what he should read, he shoots me a text. He could have shot it to his wife, kid, colleague, whatever, sent it to me because we had established that connection. Our Velcro was strong on this one thing. And right then and there, we really solidified that relationship. I've got an opportunity now going forward. I can say things like, hey, if you liked the Overstory, the one I recommended, try X as your next book. Or I can reach out to him and say, hey, how's it going? Did you get the chapter on Y? What do you think? We have an ability over this one little overlap to take our relationship even further. So understand right there, that's how this stuff works. Where it gets really, really interesting, again, Velcro, you're trying to connect with your customers, is things like the news. One of my clients based in Chicago is a technology firm, and everything they do, well, they do a lot of different kinds of things, but the biggest thing that they do is cloud migration. They're putting their clients' data from local on site up into the cloud, and they're all about doing that efficiently. They never claim to be the cheapest. They don't claim to be the longest with that kind of tech. They certainly don't say that they've got some proprietary whiz bang gizmo that does it different. What they say is, if you want to move your data to the cloud, we are the most efficient team for the job. So what do? As a guy who's trying to really connect with my clients, I find things that seem completely disconnected from the notion of data migration, but at its core, the overlap is about efficiency. I set up a Google alert, and wouldn't you know it, about 2 weeks ago, and by the way, not trying to get too into the weeds of airlines, this just happened to be a news story. A couple of weeks ago, New York Times, United decided to buy a whole bunch of new planes. The 777, I think, or 787, Dreamliner, beautiful plane, by the way. And this is all about efficiency. They're going to save tons of fuel. They're going to get people faster with less pathogens in the cabin air, and they're going to do it in a way that ultimately saves both money and time. That is the pure form of efficiency. So I sent it to them. In my mind, this is an incredible story about what they do, but in a very different type of way. They now know that I'm thinking about them. They know that I understand their beliefs. I understand what our overlap is. That's the notion of knowing them and the core concept of efficiency. You could quite literally see at the top right corner, the New York Times digitally will say, give this article like a present. You could truly give it to people. This is an amazing way, sending a simple news article to your clients. Great way of knowing, of letting them know that you care. Obviously, just a couple days ago, the State of the Union speech, one of the things that really struck me was there was an infrastructure component. And President Biden talked about the notion that in the infrastructure build out here in our country, all of the stuff that's going to build bridges and repair roads and all those things must be made in America. I have a client, big metal manufacturing company, like totally different than me. I'm a softie, right? I sit at a desk all day. This is a big, huge metal fabrication kind of place. I sent them a link, a little YouTube clip of that notion of President Biden saying it's got to be made in America. And I had a hunch that they'd already heard this. I knew they kind of knew it. But what I wanted them to know is that I was thinking of them, that when I saw the speech, the thing that struck me was my client and how it was going to impact their business. I wanted them to know that I was thinking about that overlap. Now, some of you know Dutch Bros, some of you don't. Those that don't, you will. This is my favorite stock pick, and don't trust me because all I do is seemingly lose money in the stock market. But Dutch Bros is coming, gang. I've got a client of mine who is out east. He's actually in Hartford, Connecticut. His name is Matt. And I said, Matt, I'm going to buy when Dutch Bros IPOs. This is by less than a year ago. And he's like, Dutch Bros, what are you talking about? At the time, I think the furthest east a Dutch Bros coffee shop was, I think it was in Colorado. And he's in Connecticut. He didn't even know what this thing was. And I got him all the stuff and I was like, dude, you got to do this. Well, here we are. Let's call it a year later. Matt and I constantly talk about the Dutch Brothers stock, constantly. It just hit 40 last week. We were very excited. But it's one of those kind of things where we don't talk about his business. We don't talk about his clients. We don't talk about what's going on at work. We talk about a stock, about a company that he's never experienced. We try to find those connections around those overlaps. This is a beautiful way of seeing how things that seemingly have no connection to the actual work deeply matter to the relationship. The point is put people on your radar. Think about the things that matter to them. Find those overlaps and then consistently be looking for ways to communicate about that. Now, all of the things I just showed you were essentially free, right? A conversation about a airliner, a State of the Union speech, and a clip from YouTube, and talking about stocks costs nothing. You can spend a few bucks. This weekend is the Super Bowl, and one of my clients, a big financial services company, the head of sales, he is quite a guy, and he has a massive, ridiculous house and kitchen. And he had just recently sent me a picture of what I think is the single biggest charcuterie tray ever built. It's this ginormous circle. And I said something along the lines of, I wish I could join you. I'm sure it's going to be a delightful afternoon. And then I immediately went to a place and sent him a whole bunch of cured meats. I spent some money on this one. I knew something that he liked. I know something that I like, which is food. We have an overlap about things like kitchens and charcuterie and cured meats and certainly Super Bowl. And so sometimes with the right clients, spending a few bucks is a good idea. But the thing that's so interesting about this is that it's not something like this. This is my Square Planet little coffee mug. I could have given this to him. I probably did, frankly. But that doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is the stuff that he cares about. In this case, charcuterie. And I had my radar on and I spent a few bucks, and that Velcro connection is very, very real. Again, they don't always have to be expensive. This is one of my favorites. It's the notion of being playful. This is me recreating it in slide form, but this absolutely shared experience has happened. It's when a client of mine, her name is Nancy, she did something that was really, really amazing. It gave me a new opportunity. I was very appreciative. And I said something along the lines of, "You made me happier than a dancing Darth Vader." And that's pretty darn happy. And that wasn't as on the fly as it might seem. Somehow, some way, I had come across this free GIF, and one thing led to another. I had it stashed and ready because at my little business, we like to think things through a little bit. So I had a GIF that was just the beginning because I also had these cool little note cards. And I'm not sure you can see it at all, but it says, "The Force is with you." And it has a bunch of cute little characters from Star Wars. Our logo is on C3PO's chest. If you open it up, it's blank. On the back, it says Square Planet. This was about 8 cents. This is super, super cheap. And so eventually I found a way to then write a handwritten thank you note to Miss Nancy. And in it was actually a complete box, although small. This box was inside. I also included this cute little Lego Darth Vader. Isn't he adorable for a mean bad killer? Now, she got a GIF, a thank you note, and a Lego. All this was sent by USPS. This was essentially very inexpensive. Net sum total, maybe $6 plus postage, maybe $10. But there was a line of continuity with this little Darth Vader thing. Friends, this stuff isn't hard. I made her feel like she deeply matters, like we had stuff to put a smile on her face, to add a little humor to that Velcro connection. And humor sometimes comes in the form of just straight up embarrassing awfulness. My beloved Chicago Bears are so bad that they now hold the #1 pick in the upcoming draft this April. They are terrible. They haven't been terrible for just a season. They've been terrible for decades. There's not much that I enjoy more than a Bear win. Actually, the thing that I do enjoy more than a Bear win is a Packer loss. I feel strongly about the Packers losing. Very. I'm all for it. And when they do, you know that I let everyone in my world know it, especially the Packer fans. On the rare occasion that the Bears actually win, boy, am I loud about that too. I somehow, some way get away with this, maybe because they are so terrible, but I find a connection with people on both the negative and the positive around a sport that really matters none in my business. But I promise you, your connections have similar ideologies around things. May not be around sports, but maybe it is. Point is, find a way to connect, exploit it, turn the volume up, make it fun. And I'm actually quite easy to lampoon on this kind of stuff. I do things like this. I'll make predictions. But let's say the Bears were in the Super Bowl this coming Sunday, which is, of course, never going to happen. I would say things like Bears are going to win 78-2. Ridiculous. But that's part of the joy. That's part of the fun. The extreme nature of it makes the Velcro even tighter. Now, I'm getting near the top of the clock here, and so I got to go fast. Gang, my selfie game is strong. And I'm an old guy, right? And so it might look a little different. It's because I use the photo booth app on my Mac. I can see what I'm going to do before I take the pic. It has a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then bam, I snap it. And now I can send a quick text. But I use things like my office environment to create a little space so they know where I'm at, and then a little handwritten note. I can send an email to Mindy to say thank you for a project, or I can take 10 seconds, write it out on a piece of paper with a Sharpie, take a quick selfie, and off it goes. The difference is magic. Even things like if things go sour, I sent this guy my book, it came back. What the hell? What's going on? I got a bad address from you. I suddenly got a return from him, and he simply said, "Yep, you got a couple numbers transposed. I'll quickly fix that for you." Using selfies to get people's attention is a great idea to connect with your customers. And don't forget to truly be thankful. Sometimes customers, vendors, whoever it is, they'll send us stuff. In this case, we got fruit for a couple of months. I made sure that they know I'm deeply appreciative of that fruit. I want to elevate people, even those that are being good to me. One of my clients is a very famous rock star. His name is Kenny Aronoff. He's a drummer. He plays with John Fogerty and John Mellencamp and Paul McCartney. I mean, the guy's a legend. I helped him build some speeches. And when he had a really cool thing, it was wine. He created his own wine label. You can see his glasses. And if you look real close, you can see the drumsticks. I bought his wine. It's $50 a bottle. It was my way with this little selfie to say, Kenny, what matters to you matters to me. I care about you. You can bet he deeply responded when I sent this quick little thing. Now, one thing that's very different than the selfie, that is the mailing tube. Let me ask you this. if you're at home or at your office and the mail comes and there's a tube in the stack of stuff, what's the first thing you're going to open? The tube. Sending things via US mail is such a great way to connect with your customers, and the tube is the ultimate. Now, admittedly, you've got to find something that fits in the tube, but this is a killer way to spend few bucks and get big bang. Trust me, the tube is the way to go. Now, up to you, friends. Time to go back to the tables. I want you to knock your heads around a little bit to think what you can think of, other ideas that you have done, seen, experienced, or have just come up with right now on ways that you can connect with your customers. Remember, it's about the overlap. Think about the things that you have that connection around: words, ideas, beliefs, behaviors, etc. And then think what you can do to really truly be Velcroed to your customers. Okay, time to go back to the tables. Elise, take it away. And we're back. Thank you, Elise. Friends, we're going to go quick to wrap this up. Hopefully, you found lots of ways to create this amazing Velcro connection with the idea of truly finding the things that you and your clients overlap around. It's interesting, right? Because there's lots of things. It could be things like come drive my Tesla, or let's go golf, or let's send Instavids to each other. Certainly, eating cupcakes is always a great idea. There are plenty of ways to truly connect with your customers. The thing that holds us back, the thing that really stops us, it's fear. We're afraid of being judged. Afraid of being thought of as less than or sophomoric, or a lampooned notion of other people in our industry. The truth of the matter is that the stuff that we make people feel likely will not elicit any of those. We get in our own heads. And I'm sure this is stuff that Shasta and Dr. Lieberman can touch on if you ever find them again. But this stuff is really, really hard to get over. It's hard to get over our bad selves. Once you do, however, it starts to become both fun and easy. So stop taking yourself so seriously and remember the reverse. If you are on the receiving end, if you were the one getting some of this stuff, how would you feel? Would you feel more connected or less connected? Chances are pretty good you'd feel more connected. Final thought: Sisyphus. Some of you know who this is. It's an old Greek god of sorts who was banned for life, if you will, to have to push the boulder to the top of the mountain. And once it got there, it rolled back down. And he had to repeatedly try to get to the top, only to always fail. The truth of the matter is, when it comes to client connections, if you find yourself struggling, if you're Sisyphus, always getting to the top, and then it keeps crumbling back down, maybe, just maybe, you haven't really thought about the overlap enough. And if you found that there is no overlap, then you know that's not going to be a customer for you. I really do thank you. I look forward to spending a little time at tables to talk about crazy Darth Vader gifts and more. To the Anthem team, awesome. Elise, thank you. But gang, be well, be safe. I'm out of here.
Brian, amazing as always. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.